Luqman Nation family, this is Jackie Luqman.
And I'm Dr. Shahi Luqman.
And this is Live in Luqman Nation. It is Wednesday, December 20th, and we're coming to you from Washington, D.C., an unusually warm and balmy Washington, D.C.
Yeah, unseasonably warm from where I'm from.
Yeah, you're from up Camden, way up in New Jersey. And y'all usually have like 18 feet of snow, but no, that's Michigan.
It's not that bad, but I mean, usually like a week before Christmas, we don't really feel these type of temperatures. It's really kind of abnormal, really.
Yeah, it's global warming, climate change. It's a real thing.
What are you talking about?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, I believe in global warming, but the climate deniers would talk about, this is nothing. It's just
right. It'll be 40 degrees tomorrow, and they'll be like, see, it's 20 degrees.
We just had snow a week or two ago,
so. We are testing out some new broadcasting software, so we're working out the kinks. Let us know, you guys on Facebook, you guys on YouTube, let us know if you're not seeing or hearing something. We know that there's a little bit of buffering, and we're hoping that that's going to catch up a little bit.
It should be an improvement from last time.
It should be an improvement from last. Sometimes you just got to spend some money.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of, but
we don't have a lot of, but sometimes you just got to spend some money. So we're going to give you guys a couple of minutes. Let's see. I think this is being shared on Twitter, but I'm not entirely sure.
But in the meantime, I'd like to shout out a couple of people who joined us, Kelly Morrissey and George Bernard, as well as others who are starting to come on. And we thank you for sharing your time with us. Also, those of this is the drill that we always give every week. Like, share, click on notifications so that you'll be notified on the next live streams, or and become notified on what Luqman Nation is doing. And share this, invite your friends. If you like what we're doing, and you like what Jackie and I are doing, then please go over to the Patreon account.
Yep.
And you can donate. You can one-time donate monthly, however you want to do it. Every amount we'll accept.
Yep.
And help us to continue the work that we're so passionate about.
Yeah.
And help us do this work. Trust me. We're not intended to get rich off of nobody. We got jobs. We don't think we're going to leave them anytime soon. So, I mean, this is just a passion of love for us. And, but again, there's no interns. Jackie and I are definitely a mom and pop's operation.
Brewski is an intern.
Yeah, well, but he's mostly on the bed all the time.
This is true, which is what he is right now.
Right. So, it's a mom and pop operation. We don't know what the future holds, but right now, we don't have the luxury of enslaving a college kid to become an intern, and and all those type of things. So it's just us, and we know that you guys understand, and we appreciate your patience with us at times. So moving on, we have some interesting topics. If you haven't read our advertisement. We're going to touch a little bit on the Ta-Nehisi coats and Dr. West's beef.
Rap beef.
You have rap beefs. Now you got intellectual beefs. All this other kind of stuff. So we're going to touch on that a little bit. Not spend a lot of time on it. We're going to touch on it, and we're going to deal with some things that Jackie came up with. This whole controversy with cryptocurrency and the role that cryptocurrency could play or not play in addressing the entrenched poverty that black people suffer. Now, let me explain something. Yes, we know that there are other poor people in the world. Right. Yes, we know that there are other poor people beside black people in this country. But Jackie and I, as well as others, are of the opinion that black people have been at the bottom since we've been here. There's never been no up and down for us. There's never been there's never been a lull. There's never been, any time. We have always consistently, in this society, been at the bottom of the scale economically, socially, any kind of way that you look. And all you got to do, if you don't trust Jackie, what Jackie and I are saying, all you got to do, you got the internet, go to the internet, and look up the state of black America. That's all you have to do. Yep. If Jackie and I, if what we're saying is not good enough, you think we're playing a race card, you think we're being victims, whatever you think, all you have to do is go to the internet, look up these things. Plus, trust me, there's plenty of data out there. There's plenty of things that's been written on the pitiful state of so-called black America. So when we talk about the entrenched poverty in black America, we specifically deal with black America because we're the only group of people who's been here as long as we've been here, who has been permanently at the bottom, and that is the big reason for that is the fact that we have been victims, and I know people don't like that word, but we've been victims of government orchestrated policies that kept us relegated socially and economically at the bottom. So we are proponents of black politics. We believe that the situations that the only way to alleviate our entrenched poverty, to raise us out of this ditch that the government dug for us, is for government to get us out of the ditch. Right. Some folks call that a handout. We don't. We think that if you created a problem, then you're responsible for solving the problem. Exactly. And there is no time in the history of this country that black people in mass have wanted any handouts from the government. There's, even after slavery, and we told the story about how ex-slaves in Mississippi told the Union Army that all they wanted to do was be given some land and some mules and just be left alone, and they'll fend for themselves. Right. So outside of the racist narrative myth of people who stole from us and don't want to give it back, and so they create these lies and myths in order to justify their theft and justify their mistreatment of us. And not only their mistreatment, but justify their silence in allowing the government and others to mistreat us. Exactly. So they create these myths to say that, they wasn't going to do nothing with it anyway, or, they're not capable of doing this. we were born here in the millions, so I don't think that if we weren't capable of doing anything, I don't think that Europeans would have went out of their way to enslave and kidnap and force to work millions of incapable people.
Right.
So or lazy people for that matter. So anyway, so this is why we, it's not that we don't want to work with anybody. It's not that we feel that diversity is that there's no merit in diversity. Of course there is. But what we're saying is that black people, we have to have our own political agenda like everybody else. And that political agenda has to specifically address our problems, which are unique in this country when compared to everybody else.
Right, exactly. And the idea that what we are demanding as far as making us whole as a people is equated to handouts by people who just, really want to ignore 400 years of theft and abuse and policy that's intentionally discriminatory and practices that are intentionally discriminatory. That's not a burden that we should be made to bear. Right. Just because somebody else who doesn't want to right the wrongs want to call it handouts, it doesn't mean that it is.
Exactly.
I mean, if you come to my house and steal all my stuff and I take you to court and the person who stole my stuff says, well, and then the court says, well, look, you have to pay this stuff back. The person who stole my stuff can say, well, you making me pay them back is handouts all they want to. But in order for me as the victim to be made whole, you got to pay me my stuff back. I don't care what you call it.
That's right.
And what was taken from black people as a whole, and what was denied the descendants of those original black people who were brought here, that was theft. And it wasn't just like one time. It was theft of people from our original home. It was theft of resources that we acquired. It was theft of our labor. It was even theft of our children.
Theft of our progeny.
It was theft of our progeny. So we were the victims of wide-scale, systematic theft.
Very well orchestrated.
Extremely well orchestrated. Just over centuries. So making us whole from that is called reparations. Other people who don't like reparations can call it whatever they want. But at the end of the day, it is making a victimized people whole. And it is amazing to me that you have groups of people who have been the victims of a sophisticated, orchestrated theft that lasted for nearly a century. No, I'm sorry, not a century. God forgive me. A decade.
Yeah.
Almost. And they were able to be made whole by the government. An individual person and his family members orchestrated this massive Ponzi scheme in which they intentionally stole people's money, lied about their investments, stole their money, took their money, put the money in offshore accounts, and then got legitimate investment firms to infuse this fake investment firm with cash. So, because you have to pay some of this money out to some of these investors to make them think that they're still investing in something legitimate. That money had to come from somewhere. So the people who were the victims of this long-term, large-scale, sophisticated theft were actually made whole, and they are in the process of being made whole by the government right now. This ought to sound familiar to some of y'all right now. I hope that the audio is better. Somebody messaged me, thanks George, and let me know that the audio is distorted. I hope it's better. Please let us know that it is, so we can fix it if it's not. So hopefully that ought to pique people's memory, because we're talking about Bernie Madoff.
Bernie Madoff. Always, that name always got me. I was like, his parents must have knew that he was going to grow up to be a crook.
They marked him.
Bernie made off. And I know that joke's been done, but I couldn't help it.
But how true is it though?
Yeah.
Bernie made off with all of these people's money, but here is an example of people who were the victims of a sophisticated, sustained theft being made whole.
Yeah.
By the government.
With the help of the government.
With the help of the government.
Yeah.
So, let me see. So right now, about half of the people who successfully filed a claim against Bernie Madoff's fake investment firm, him and his estate, have recovered the principal stolen from them. Right.
They recovered the principal, and I think that was based upon, if I'm not mistaken, something that came out of a fund.
Right.
Was it? Yeah.
I mean, this is the remedy. The way these people have been made whole is multifaceted, right? Mm-hmm. So on the one hand, the people who filed successful claims against Madoff were able to sue the estate of his two now deceased sons.
I like where you're going to go with this, because we spoke about this.
We talked about this.
Well, you go ahead.
I mean, this blows my mind. It blows my mind when I think about how this was done, and these people talking about how black folk just want handouts when we talk about reparations.
Right.
But we're really talking about making us whole from generations long theft from us and denial of equal opportunity from us, right?
Well, I mean, we're also talking about justice too.
We're also talking about justice.
Because reparations and everything that we brought up so far is basically justice. I mean, you take a people, you kidnap them, you cut them off from their land, their culture, their language. Mm-hmm. You bring them over here, you force them to work, you mistreat them, you rape the women. Mm-hmm. And you have the biggest. Let me see if I get the term right. But you had the largest form of miscegenation. I think that's what they call it.
Oh, the mixing of the
yeah. I mean, you had the biggest form of miscegenation. Forced miscegenation. Most of the stuff wasn't consensual. Right. And it's mighty funny that we're in this age of sexual assault and and women rightfully so basically pushing back on sexual assault from men in power, and the fact that we had the biggest forms of miscegenation that happened just not in America but throughout the slaveholding world.
Exactly.
Where you're talking about sexual assault on a major scale. That's the only reason why you can have the type of different hues and tones that we as black people have. So you're talking about not only assault, sexual assault, but you're talking about physical assault, and we don't, it's something that all of us know, and those of us who have who's aware of the crimes and sins of slaveholding nations and colonialism. Right. But I mean, you're talking about people that was traumatized on all fronts.
Exactly.
It was like no break in the trauma.
Nothing.
And so now you got this trauma on all fronts. And then all of a sudden, because slavery as an institution couldn't be maintained anymore, it wasn't really dismantled because people had to change of heart. It was dismantled because it's kind of hard to maintain a system of millions of people as slaves. It becomes once again an economic issue. An economic issue that it's not economically feasible to maintain slavery as an institution. So now now you have to by really necessity. To dismantle this inhumane system. And then all of a sudden, when the people try to recover from this trauma and all the trauma that's associated with it, then they get more trauma. Right. And it's like now you get the trauma of for examples of when formerly enslaved Africans went about building communities and in some terms became successful at it, then that wealth was taken. And then when the government set up the Freedmen's Bank and formerly enslaved Africans used the Freedmen's Bank and they worked with their hard-earned hands and put millions of dollars in 1800 money, put millions of dollars in the Freedmen's Bank, millions, only to have people say, well, they don't deserve to have all that money, and they took. The next time you ride Amtrak or ride any rails in America, remember that it was the money that was taken out of the Freedmen's Bank that funded the railroads in this country.
Ooh.
So that's what's funded the railroads in this country. So it was the stolen money out of the Freedmen's Banks what helped funded the railroads in this country. So the next time you're on a train and you're traveling around, you're looking at the beautiful countryside. That was the origins of that was started by stolen money from formerly enslaved people. So there should be, if we have any kind of humanity with us, if there's any kind of, if we are human, with all that entails of being human, there should not even be any, I feel that there should not be any resistance to people who were brutalized in that fashion for having some kind of justice being done by those who had committed such harm. We can't just wipe our hands clean and just say, well, okay, yeah, that was sad, but that was in the past, and let's move on. You can only move on, as you said, Jackie, is after some attempts have been made to make you whole.
Exactly.
That's why people sit on that's why people lay across have shrinks and psychiatrists, and why there's 12-step programs and all kind of stuff, because there's been a need and an understanding for a long time that trauma has to be addressed. You just can't, soldiers coming back from war, they just don't release them in the street when they're not supposed to.
Right.
They're actually supposed to have some kind of psychological training, because it's not natural for people to go somewhere and kill folks.
Right.
That's just not natural.
Every day, all day.
Yeah, and be afraid of being killed. So you got soldiers who are constantly in this fight or flight. And that's the way that blacks have been in this country. Fight or flight. So that in itself is trauma, because you don't know what your status is. You don't know. You have no you're not safe. You have no security. You have none of those things. And then all of a sudden now it's because, oh, well, what we did was wrong. We're sorry, but it's all done now. Let's move on.
Right. And you can't.
You just can't do that.
No, you're right. You can't just move on, especially when every resource that you have has been taken from you. And then when the resources that your ancestors had was taken from you, so they don't have anything to pass down to their progeny.
Right. Then
the opportunities to recoup anything is also denied their ancestors. So this one group of people, and it's not just us, it's the Native Americans too, they have a different trajectory, but our trajectories intertwine a lot. But we're talking about people who have been, who've had everything taken from us, from labor to property to people, to our children, taken from us. And then when we built communities, successful, independent communities where we ain't asked for nothing from nobody, what happened? They were taken from us. They were destroyed. People were murdered. Then we go off and fight war, trying to prove that we love this country too. And we come back. And what happened? We were basically told, look, don't get uppity just because you went and fought a war. So then white people came in, destroyed our communities, killed our returning veterans, put us in our place. And then we couldn't get jobs. And then when we got jobs, we weren't paid as much as white people with the same skill set, with the same experience for the same job. And that has never ended.
Exactly.
That's never ended. So you've got a group of people in that situation historically, and we're still enduring that today. And then you look at a situation like the victims of Bernie Madoff's intentional, sophisticated scheme. Now, like you were saying, one of the funds that has been set up to pay the victims of Madoff's scheme to make them whole is let me get it right. I don't want to get $4 billion, billion with a B, that is overseen by the Department of Justice.
Wow. Wow.
Bernie Madoff was a private investment banker, right? His fake fund was something that people voluntarily invested in. It wasn't money coming out of people's paychecks. It wasn't your FICA tax. It wasn't your Social Security. It wasn't your payroll tax. If you had money, you voluntarily invested in it. And just like any other investment, because that's what an investment is like a gamble. Some investments are less risky than others. Some investments are kind of stable. But all investments are gambles.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
They really are, because you don't know what the value of your investment will be in the future. You hope that it appreciates. Some investments do appreciate on a steady trajectory than others. And because they are so stable, maybe they don't make as much money as the riskier investments.
Right.
See, the risky investments are where people make a lot of money real quick. Because the risky investments respond directly to market trends, and a whole bunch of people get in on them and jacks up the value of the investment real quick, and then people hope that they can make a lot of money but that's risk. And you can't, the rule of thumb in investments is you should not invest more money than you can afford to lose. So these people who invested with Bernie Madoff weren't like you and me. They weren't like working people who had, paltry little 401ks and, barely any money in savings. They had a sizable amount of money to invest. These people were investing thousands of dollars. 10,
well, most of them were millionaires in their own right.
Most of them were millionaires anyway. I mean, Bernie Madoff had the owner of Home Depot investing with him. So we're not talking about people who were investing like the leftover money from their last paycheck, right? So these people had money that they could afford to lose. So when we see these people on there, remember when they showed in 2008 when the Ponzi scheme was revealed, and they showed all these people who were crying, "Oh my God, I lost my life savings and everything is gone." No, that wasn't true. Now, I'm not saying these people didn't lose their life savings.
Right.
A lot of people did lose their life savings. But we're talking about six-figure life savings. Nobody should steal anything from anybody. But we're not talking about like our life savings. That little $40,000 in the 401k. Okay? We're talking about these people had $200,000, $300,000 in their life savings.
Right.
And they might have invested half of it, and that was gone. But they're still living in a house that's valued at six figures. So maybe they had to mortgage their house at the time So these people weren't broke. But still, even though they were not left with absolutely nothing because Madoff stole from them, they were able to sue not only Madoff's investment firm, but the legitimate investment firm, what's the name of it? Let me find it. Thema International Fund, which was an Irish investment fund that provided European cash for Madoff's firm. They were able to sue Thema International and settle with Thema International for $687 million.
Wow. $687 million.
These are people who had their kids stolen. They weren't stolen from another land. They weren't denied opportunity to participate in the free market economy. They gambled in an investment, and they were lied to and their money was stolen. That's absolutely true. But they were able to sue the person who lied to them and his children and the company that funded the liar who stole from them, and get back from them $687 million. On top of that, they sued the estates of his now deceased son and got back from his now deceased son's estate $23 million. There's a $4 billion fund, like I said, that's overseen by the Justice Department. I don't know where that money comes from. I can't tell you because I couldn't. But somebody found $4 billion with a B.
Wow.
That the Department of Justice, the government, is overseeing, because they agree that these people who have had their money stolen from them by a private individual deserve to be made whole for what was taken from them. Now, not only that, this is the kicker. I think this is kind of amusing. Not only did the people who invested directly with Bernie Madoff, not only are they made whole, because more than half of these people have recouped the principal amounts of money that they invested. The amount of money that they gave Bernie Madoff, they're getting back. Mm-hmm. Not only did the direct investors, are they being made whole, but the indirect investors, the people who invested in the funds that were offshoots of the original Ponzi scheme fund, they're being made whole. On average, that's about 24,000 indirect investors, and so far they're getting a check of like $35,000. These are all the people who are being made whole with the help of the government, with the acknowledgement and the help of the government, because an individual person stole their money. And you're going to sit here and tell me that a people who has had the government itself steal from us and deny us opportunity, we don't have a right to demand that that government makes us whole? Yes, we do. How can you that is just the leap in that logic that people make when I look at this story about Madoff's investors and the indirect investors and how they're being made whole, and how that's perfectly logical and reasonable. But then people somehow, some of the same people are like, oh no, reparations, we can't do reparations. Really? Oh, that's just handouts. You can call it what you want. It's owed me because it was stolen from me. So that speaks to the issue that I have such a problem with in the progressive, whatever it is now, revolution, that we can't get behind pushing for making people whole in this country who have been disenfranchised by this country. We can get behind any other scheme, any other idea, any other way of making individual people money, right? And we can get behind that, but we can't get behind restitution and being made whole by the entity that caused the offense. And it's not like we don't know who the entities are, by the way. Because that's another argument that people have. Oh, we don't know. How would we know who would pay reparations? What do you mean? Almost every insurance company that exists today profited from the slave trade.
And then again, that shouldn't even matter.
Thank you.
The reason why I say that shouldn't even matter is because it doesn't matter individuals, whether it was individual slave holders. It doesn't matter if it was some of the companies which still exist today that profited off of slavery, that made their money off of slavery, that continued, that helped them become bigger. None of that matters. And we're going to talk about this brother a little bit later on, Ta-Nehisi Coates, who wrote the most brilliant manifesto on the case for reparations.
Oh my God!
And one of the things he said in his work, the reason why all of this other stuff is ridiculous about who we going to get to pay and this and that, the fact that slavery, the entire country, in fact the entire Western world depended on slave labor. And let's not just say the Western world, the entire world, period, because slavery created overseas markets for Britain, Spain, all of the colonial powers, from all of the goods that were produced from slave labor, southern cotton, and all this other kind of stuff. Who do you think they sold it to? They sold it to markets overseas.
Yep.
So even people in Asia and other places where these ships were laden with slave-produced goods went, then the population there benefited from slave labor. So I mean, it's ridiculous for us to get into this argument about who owes this and who owes that when the entire country was propped up on slavery. So it doesn't matter. I mean, what matter? It's one of those things that if you and I went out and did a crime, and I was just with you, and you robbed the bank, and I was the getaway driver, right? There's no way I can go to court if we both got caught and say, well, I shouldn't get her sentence because I was just the driver.
Right.
You know what I mean? But the fact remains is when you robbed that bank, you broke down with me.
And you knew I was robbing the bank.
Right. I knew you was robbing the bank. I knew you was about bank robbing. So I knew you was about bank robbing when I rode with you. So now you go and rob the bank, you get the money, you get in with me, and everything, we ride off. I'm not going to just take you to the bank, you robbing law, and I don't get something for it. So what I'm saying is that any court of law would consider my argument ridiculous if I went in there and say, well, I ain't actually robbed the bank, I just drove the car. And it's the same way with the slavery. The fact that the entire system was built upon slavery. Family dynasties were made off of slavery. Yep. The fact that Wall Street and all of these financial markets which exist today found their origins through the slave trade. This stuff ain't just go away. They ended slavery, but the infrastructure that was built upon slavery still remained.
Yep.
Instead of trading slaves, they trade something else. Instead of the market existed then. So even slave prices fluctuated. The market determined how much a slave was worth, and so those things is not nothing new. So out of a sense of justice is the fact that this country, and we're only dealing with this country now. I can't get caught up in what Brazil's going to do or anything else, but this country should in order to not only remove the stain of slavery from its record, but also in the long run, disenfranchising black people has been more expensive than paying reparations. And I'll repeat that again. Disenfranchising black people, making sure we don't get anything, making sure that we are at the bottom economically through policies and everything, has been more expensive for this government than it would have been to just say, you know what, we were wrong, we took your wealth, we're going to give it back. The government, we're going to make you whole, we're going to, whatever the forms of reparations would have been. But because the government have refused to do that, and because the American people have refused to even hear the grievances of not only the ex-enslaved, but their descendants,
right,
it has become more expensive. It's more expensive now for the government to continually to disenfranchise black people in this entrenched poverty. Poverty costs.
Poverty is expensive.
Poverty is expensive,
poor, and it costs to continue to perpetuate.
Right. So the thing with the Madoff thing, and I thought that it was very interesting when you brought up about Bernie Madoff and his kids. The fact that his kids, I think both his sons are dead now, but they were able to die with an estate. Now here's a guy who, here's two kids whose father was the biggest thief in modern times. The biggest thief in modern times. Not the biggest thief ever, but he was the biggest thief in modern times. And his kids were able to still have an estate.
Right.
Now, you look at black people, our ancestors, and even if you don't want to, if going back that far is too much for you, let's deal with, and this is the reason why Jackie and I have a problem with Barack Obama. Because one of the things that the Madoff story told me is that the government will always protect white wealth.
Every time.
The government will always protect white wealth. Now, we ain't talking about people in the Appalachians. Of course, we know that there's exceptions. But for the most part, white wealthy people will always have the government to back them. Now, the reason why we have such a problem with the Obama years, and the reason why, one of the reasons why that Cornel West had a problem with Ta-Nehisi Coates, is that we saw the biggest transfer of black wealth in modern times under Obama. the biggest transfer of black wealth. Most black people have their wealth tied into their homes. And we have covered this before on this show about how devastating the recession was and the housing bubble crisis was towards black people and black homeowners and stuff. So not only did we see the largest transference of wealth from the bottom to the top under Obama, we also saw the largest transfer of wealth from black people under Obama up to the top or to the banks and stuff. And the so-called first black president sat back and allowed that to happen. Black people didn't have government to protect their wealth. Black people didn't have government to step in like the government did with Madoff, and the Justice Department came and said, look, black people were disproportionately hurt by this. Underneath Eric, who was the Holder? Yeah, I mean, the Justice Department, we had a black man who was in charge of that. We had a black woman who was in charge of the Justice Department after Eric Holder left. Right, and then we have Obama. So, so you have black folks that was there in the positions of power and leadership, and they could not ensure protection, or they were reluctant or would not protect the loss of black wealth, and they would not even do anything to make sure that there was policies in place so that these people could recoup what was stolen from them. Because let me tell you something, I don't care what the narrative is about, well, these people got into something that they shouldn't have got into, or they should have read the fine print. It was theft. Anytime that you deceive people, and that's what a lot of these so-called mortgage things and all stuff. But it was deception. First of all, the same people that's saying this, unless you're a lawyer, then you tell me the next time that legal contracts come in that you don't go get a lawyer. Right. So the thing of it is that what I'm saying is that, first of all, it was unrealistic to expect these people to have the kind of savvy to deal with the deception that they were going into. And so deception is theft. And that's exactly what it is. So I don't care if it was legal or not. It was theft. And there was no attempt on the part of government under Barack Obama, black president, so-called, Eric Holder, black head of the Justice Department, and his successor, the black woman who can't remember her name. But here, so it wasn't because black people didn't have folks that looked like them in power. Right. It's the fact that this country has been consistent in depriving black people of wealth and not protecting black people from being exploited by capitalists, raw capitalists, unchecked capitalism, unrestrained capitalism. Black people have never been protected by government, even when the people in power look like them.
And West's criticism of Coates was because Coates, when he had the opportunities to really bring to light the flaws with the Obama presidency, he didn't really do it. Yes, he did write some articles, Coates meaning, he did write some articles criticizing one thing or one thing there, but you brought something up that I actually forgot about. And we will provide a link for you to all of these things, because I'm afraid to share them now because our bandwidth is spotty as it is, and I don't want to drop the stream. So we'll figure this out next week. But there was an interview that Ta-Nehisi Coates did with President Obama. And Coates did bring up reparations during the interview. Now again, Ta-Nehisi Coates is a brilliant writer. I read, remember when we shared the essay, The Case for Reparations on our page, and we talked about that thing for like a month.
Yeah, everybody was talking about it.
Because it was brilliant. It brilliant.
It actually summed up everything that, it was like the best argument.
It is.
Yeah, for reparations.
And you called it exactly what it is. It is the manifesto for reparations. I am convinced that nobody can write anything better than Ta-Nehisi Coates' The Case for Reparations. But when he did an interview, when he interviewed President Obama, and he was sitting on the stage, I forget where he was, but it was in front of an audience of people. They're sitting on the stage, Ta-Nehisi Coates and President Obama, And Coates asked Obama about reparations, and President Obama proceeds to explain why he doesn't believe reparations will work. He doesn't believe in them.
Well, he actually said, which really disgusts me, with the excuse that he used. He didn't use that the government couldn't afford it. He didn't use any of the normal arguments that people have used against reparations. What this clown said, and I hate to disrespect the president, but I mean it angers me on a deep level. It just angers me on a deep level. But what he said was that I don't think newly arrived immigrants would go for it. That is what he said. And like I said, he didn't use the thing about we can't afford it, or he didn't use the argument that we put forward earlier about all slaveholders are dead. Who's going to pay, or
right.
Or how we going to how we going to figure this out? He didn't use any of those arguments. His argument was newly arrived immigrants would not go for it. Now, as an American citizen, as the son of American citizens, as the grandsons of American citizens, as the great grandsons of American citizens, as the great great grandsons of American citizens, justice for me and other African Americans have to rest upon newly arrived immigrants. The fact that our ancestors built the country, defended the country, the country wouldn't exist without the African American population. And the fact that you, the so-called first black president, is going to tell me that newly arrived immigrants wouldn't go for it. I've never known anything in this country that depended on what newly arrived immigrants had to say about it.
I did not understand how. I didn't understand why President Obama would use that as an excuse. I mean, I did politically, but as a black person, just like you, the daughter of Americans, the granddaughter of Americans who fought for this country, by the way, and who were discriminated against when they came back home. I was like, are you serious? When I think of this story, going back to the Bernie Madoff story, the Justice Department did not say to the people who sued Madoff and his son's estates, well, now what would new investors think about you?
Right, exactly. Right.
Nobody says that to anybody but us. Nobody comes up with those ridiculous, nonsensical, illogical, had nothing to do with the price of tea in China excuses for anybody and anything else, except for when it comes to putting some money in black people's hands for the crap that's been done to us and taken from us. As much as I just couldn't wrap my head around the fact that President Obama thought that made sense for him to actually say in front of a room full of black people.
But you know what? And we're going to get into the reason why Obama felt comfortable to say that. But the crime, but the problem that Wes had, as a lot of us had with that interview with Obama, is that here is a person, Coates, who wrote the most brilliant essay on reparations. He could have easily slapped all of that down just based upon what he wrote.
Right.
But he sat there in deference to Obama's nonsensical response, ignorant ass response, and he just let it go. He didn't challenge it.
Right.
And I told you before the reason why Obama felt comfortable, as he always had felt comfortable through his 8 years of being president when it came to black people, is because Obama felt, and he was right, he got it like that. He had it like that. The fact that he started off in the beginning when he ran for president, I don't know about Chicago, but I know that when he started getting on the national scene, his whole conversation with Black America was just like it was the way that racist conservative whites would talk to us. Right. It was all about respectability. It was all of the American conservative white talking points respectability nonsense that people feel that they have to tell black. But basically what he was doing was he was basically promoting the idea of black pathology.
Yep.
And that's the way he did it. Now, he felt like he had it like that is because of the deference that Black America paid him. Mm-hmm. That's the reason why Coates didn't challenge him. Right. Because of this mistaken view that we have that wherever it's rooted from, mm-hmm. I mean, you know, we can all argue where it's rooted in, but it's this mistaken belief that we have to defend black people even when we know they're fools, even when we know they're idiots, yep. Even when we know that that what they're saying or what they're doing is against our best collective interest. Mm-hmm. Now, for Obama to sit on that stage as President of the United States in front of a black audience with Coates, who wrote the most brilliant essay on reparations, and for him to just, Obama's a brilliant man. That answer that he gave was showed his contempt. It showed his contempt, mm-hmm. and it showed his arrogance with his relationship to black people, to the fact that even now with Roy Moore, that all he felt he had to do was just make one robocall and my folks would come out.
Right.
So Obama never had any respect for us. Mm-hmm. And his whole relationship with black people has always been from the position of contempt, and the fact that Obama has never, he didn't grow up like us.
That's true.
He didn't grow up like us. And so, I mean, we as black people need to get out of this stuff that just because you got a little tan to your skin, that don't always mean that you're going to let us in. I just made that up.
That's great.
Yeah.
That was good.
Yeah. I'll repeat this again. And I want a quarter for every time somebody say this. Just because you got a little tan on your skin doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to let us in. And that is the thing that I felt that we as black people, we have to understand, and this is the borrowed phrase from Yvette Carnell, because I do give credit where credit is due. Mm-hmm. We as black people have to understand, Jackie, that politics is a blood sport. It's about winning. It's not about, symbolism. We have to get out. Remember the old World War II monument of Mount Okinawa with the Marines holding flags and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. We have to get out of viewing politics like a monument. We have to get out of viewing politics as symbolism. Mm-hmm. Oh, we got the first black president. That ain't nothing. What is the first black president going to do? It's the same way with everything else. It's like, oh, well, we got the first black female mayor. Well, that's nice. What's she planning on doing? So we gotta mature past symbolism, mm-hmm. and we have to mature past appealing to people's morality. We was talking about this before the show, that it kills me, the reason why that Trump just passed the House just passed, the Congress passed the tax bill. Right. And you and I were talking before the show how Trump, this is a major piece of legislation, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And how Trump wasn't worried about bridging the gap between the aisle. Trump wasn't worried about kumbayaism. He wasn't worried about going high while everybody going low. Nope. He wasn't worried about that. Trump went in there to do what he know the folks put him in there to do. He is from business. He looked out for people in business. And it just bothers me that we got black politicians who come in, who go into office. We put them in there, mm-hmm. and they're so busy wanting to be the pastor of America, the rabbi of America. They're so busy wanting to change the hearts and minds. When nobody else, Trump, none of them, nobody else. When Bush was in there and Bush said, I'm going to get Saddam Hussein because he tried to kill my daddy, he knew Iraq didn't have anything to do with 9/11. Yep. But the thing of it is, he wasn't worried about newly arrived Arab immigrants, worrying about whether they were invading Iraq.
What would what Bush didn't say? What would the Muslim immigrants say?
He didn't care about that. He said they tried to kill my daddy. He was surrounded by a bunch of neocons who wanted to put their plan in place. They didn't care how many people would die from it. Yep. They didn't care what kind of destruction that implementing this strategy for a new American, whatever they
and he didn't care what his own daddy said.
He didn't care what his own dad said.
Because his own daddy told him not to do it.
Right. So what I'm saying is the fact that when that these black politicians, they get up in there and it doesn't surprise me that everybody's a damn pastor. Everybody that gets in office is always a damn pastor. Well, we need some truck drivers up in there.
I think so.
You know what I mean? We need some other folks in there to run for office that's that's not beholden to this outdated paradigm of the civil rights struggle. And it's outdated. You can't. I mean, what happened in the '60s ain't gonna work today. It ain't gonna work with these type of wolves we got up in there now.
No.
You could take Johnson. You could take the politicians and all them that work with King, and I guarantee you, if they were around in government today, they would. I mean, we had them in government today, and we knew, like to compare, they would probably be a lot better than the folks we got up in there now. So we can't take this old, outdated civil rights, beat me in the head, and I'll thank you for your service type of mentality when dealing with these type of capitalist vultures. And these imperialist vultures and these racist folks that we got up in there now, who it's all about taking as much as you can. They ain't patriots. I don't give a damn how many stars and striped flags they wear on their lapel. They're not patriots. The patriotism is a game for those of us. That it's a game. They could care two bits about this country. So my point being is that it's time for black politicians and black people to understand that politics is it's a sport. It's a blood sport. You don't get in there unless you're going to bloody up the other person or you're going to get bloody.
Yep.
And so, in too long, black people have played this game. Have been walking in the lion's den carrying milk and cookies.
Hoping that the lions would be like, hey, it's so nice that you brought it. I'm not going to eat you because you were so kind because you brought these men. Nah, they're going to eat you. They're going to eat your behind. They're going to eat you. They will eat you. They have been eating us alive. And it's blown my mind to watch this so-called progressive revolution foment. Y'all don't understand what revolution is. You don't. And I'm not even going to apologize for this. You don't know what revolution is. Just because something is allegedly new, first of all, ain't nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun. I'm going to get to cryptocurrency in a minute. I'm getting there. But even that's not really new. The idea of an alternative currency outside of the capitalist system, outside of the global markets that's controlled by the people, that ain't new.
No.
Why do you think Muammar Gaddafi was murdered? You need to look up what he was trying to do with Africa and currency. You'll understand that this isn't new to us, but let me get back on track. So the Cornel West's problem with Coates is that Cornel West did not challenge the image of Barack Obama. He celebrated the importance of the image of Barack Obama. And again, historically, it's having the first black president. It's an amazing historical accomplishment for this country. It is. But when we're getting into the realm of policy that affects people's lives, and you have an audience of people who are now just becoming aware of the depth and the breadth of the injustice that was done to us, and you were the person who wrote the manifesto. Right, how are you going to let the man who holds the power now off the hook by letting him say, well, what would newly arriving immigrants think if we just gave all of these black people whose families have been in this country for 4 centuries and who have been raped and pillaged by this country for 4 centuries? What would the newly arriving immigrants think? So West's anger at Coates was that you know the history and you are in a unique position to educate this new group of people into this history, and you didn't do your job. You didn't do your job, son.
That's right.
And I understand that it's a heavy lift. I get tired of explaining this shit to white people. I do. I mean, it's December 20th, and I don't want to talk to white people anymore. I'm sorry, but I am so tired of explaining to white people who call themselves revolutionaries why, if you don't base whatever it is you're doing on how it is going to benefit people at the bottom, it's not revolutionary. We've been talking about this to some of y'all for 2 years now. And y'all still thinking about top down, from the top down, trickle down, we'll get a few people in so they can benefit, and then those few people are going to help everybody else. That ain't how revolution works. So when I think about Cornel West's criticism of Ta-Nehisi Coates, and I see progressives like taking Cornel West's side, I also, which is fine, and I'm not even taking sides on this, because sometimes I have a beef with Cornel West too, because that rap album he put out was just some mess. And I understand that was, like you said, that was the time when all the intellectuals were putting out rap albums and spoken word albums.
Well, and it was a time when Cornel West was just being discovered by a new generation of kids.
Right. So he was doing his thing, but it was a mess, Doc. It was a mess. And that kerchief of yours, stop. But I mean, I'm not taking sides here. I'm just being honest about what Dr. West was criticizing Coates for. And there's a video where Dr. Cornel West himself explains why he criticized Cornel West, and we'll give you a link to that video too. But the problem I'm having with progressives who are weighing in on this is that you ain't standing up for black folks enough for me. You're just not. You're talking about, all of you're talking about drone strikes, and that's fine. I understand. That's horrible. Obama was a murderess. He was just as murderous as every other president, as far as bombing brown people all around the world. He was actually worse than Bush, and that's saying some stuff. That's saying something. But there is still a reluctance in the progressive, largely white, revolutionary community to call out the need to center the black and native struggle in this country. Y'all still scared to talk about black stuff. You really are. If for no other reason, Ta-Nehisi Coates, who is the author of the great manifesto that is the case for reparations, refused to make the case for reparations for black people in this country. If you white progressives are going to weigh in on that discussion, then you need to weigh in on behalf of the people that Coates didn't stand up for. But you're not doing that. And that's a problem. And because I don't only see you not doing that in that discussion, I didn't see you doing it in the healthcare debate. Some of y'all were the same people who were talking about you would rather work with members of the alt-right, racists, to get healthcare passed than to work with the people who are the most disenfranchised for lack of healthcare, black people and native people. How that made sense to you, I have no idea. I still don't understand how that made sense to people.
No, me neither.
And when we're talking about economic issues, now we're going to get to cryptocurrency. If anything we do in this revolutionary space, whatever it is that we're talking about doing, if it is not going to empower the people at the bottom of society, it's not revolutionary. Now, I understand revolutionary has different meanings. Revolutionary could mean something that's new and that's going to cause some kind of massive change to some area, where, like, Microsoft Windows was revolutionary because it was DOS. It was MS-DOS. It was Microsoft DOS before. And Windows moved word processing from CRT-based, what do you want to call it? I can't remember the code. I guess it was Fortran, just command code, to what we have now, which is Windows, which is like pictures. That was revolutionary because it changed the technological space, right? It changed business. it was not revolutionary in the sense that it benefited poor people. It benefited society on every level, because Windows, you got to pay money for Windows, and now, okay, every computer comes with Windows, but you need money to buy a computer. Mm-hmm. So we are talking about revolution in a capitalist system, a raw capitalist system.
Yeah,
an unrestrained capitalist system, and a predatory capitalist system that perpetuates poverty among the people at the bottom, so that the people at the top can have more and always have more. So when you are talking about creating an alternate currency,
or using an alternate
currency that relies on the capitalist system for people to be able to benefit off of it, that's not revolutionary. And the discussions I've had with people have been, I just have not understood how people don't get that if you're poor and you don't have any money, and I mean you don't have any money in between your paycheck, your mortgage, your rent, your car note, your insurance, your light bill, your gas bill, and maybe your cell phone bill, you have $8. That's all you have left.
Okay, well, $8 is actually rooted in something.
And I'm not just pulling that out of my behind. $8 is the average net worth of black people in Boston. $8.
And what was the number for the whites in Boston?
247,000. 200.
We're talking about, once again, as we spoke on the show before. You could take Boston and you can just go across the country with that type of example.
Right.
We spoke on the show where they said that the value of that the average black woman has is like $5.
Right.
We've seen the charts. Many of y'all joined us on the show. Once again, I would encourage you to do some research and look at this wide racial disparity when it comes to wealth. And we said this at the top of the show, that this is not because black people are different than anybody else. Mm-hmm. This is because that there were government policies that was put in place, government that indirectly supported policies that were put in place that basically herded black people into the impoverished zone, as I call it.
Right.
And no amount of hard work is going to get us out of it. And that's the thing. No amount of hard work. We done watched our parents work themselves to death in most cases. Man. We done watched people in our neighborhood never miss a day at work. And yet, still could not bridge the wealth gap in this country. And we have even put up an article, and you can still find it. Like I said, do some research, where someone, where a think tank had did the work. And they said that it would take 240-some years for black people to catch up with white people. 240-some years. It's mighty funny that those 200-some years is actually the same length of time that slavery existed. So that number didn't just come out of somebody's behind. That 200-some years that they said it would take for black people to catch up with white people actually incorporates the time that blacks were enslaved in this country.
Exactly.
So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that if you had a 200-some year head start, how's the person that's running after you had a 200-some year head start going to catch up with you? And not to mention that even during the times of economic problems in this country, government made sure, when we had the Depression, government made sure that they did something to help poor white folks at least get a job. Even if they had to make one, which is what the WPA and all that stuff was. Right, even if the government had to make one and say, okay, well, you just clean the park up. Okay, we need a bridge over here. Or the government even employed journalists, and that is how we got the oral records of ex-slaves.
Right.
Because the WPA sent out unemployed journalists to go through the South and get the recollections of some of the slaves who were still living at that time.
That's where the slave narratives come from. You can find them in the Library of Congress online.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that government had did what it was supposed to do when those times come. The fact, the problem is that government haven't done that with us. Mm-hmm. Government haven't, and you know, for all of the people that got all these negative things to say about black people, I really think that it is a testament to the resiliency of black people to have been able to come to this country. And this is not just white folks. This is even some of our Afro brothers and sisters from different parts of the world that always got something to say. So I'm going to relate it to black people. Okay. So the programs that happen here, the fact that even after so-called freedom, that black people were still violently robbed of wealth, because you brought a good point up. This wasn't just, you know, underhanded deal. In some cases it was. But in most cases, black people had their wealth just violently taken away from them. Right. Even if it was just an individual store owner, where we was talking about the story of Ida B. Wells, who got into anti-lynching activism because a friend of hers was lynched because he was a successful black business store owner and he was making more money than his white counterpart, and he got lynched for that. And that's what got her into anti-lynching activism. So we see that throughout this sojourn in this country, that we have had different ways of being dispossessed or denied access to the so-called American dream. And the fact that we are still here. During the Depression of the 1930s, when you can look at it and see how bad it was for whites, Hooverville and all that. Right. Well, you could imagine how bad it was for blacks. And I don't have to imagine, because I had relatives who lived through that who told me how it was for them. You know, my great-grandmother told me how oftentimes her and my great-grandfather would have to go to bed hungry because there was only enough food to feed the kids. Right. And my great-grandfather, he worked for the city of Camden as a street repair person. And he worked 12 hours a day. So can you imagine a man working 12 hours a day, fixing streets in Camden, coming home and they don't have nothing to eat? Right. But he didn't leave his family. They still kept it, you know. So what I'm saying is the resilience of black people to try to strive in spite of. You know, that's what gives me hope. But again, going back to Coates, that was one of the reasons that West had a problem with him. Coates reminds me of so many of, and I see a generational shift. Okay. All right. I see the generational shift of Coates and West that I see played out even in our everyday lives. Cornel West, being older, been through the Black Power struggles of the 60s and 70s, was raised on that, became an intellectual based upon that, as he say, prophetic. Right. He is part of the prophetic intellectual tradition that goes back to Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and all those other ones. And Coates is from a generation that we see of our young black people who are sort of detached. Detached from the struggle. From that struggle of well, Coates people are Black Panthers. He come from Black Panthers. And so he's from the generation that you see so often where they were the first generation that was spoon-fed this racial colorblindness. Even though he comes from Black Panthers, and he was spoon-fed this racial colorblindness, he was spoon-fed this whole pessimism about what gains that we have that you see with our young people today. The fact that, well, you know, you have a lot of our young black people today that says, well, you know, y'all failed us. Y'all didn't do this and y'all didn't do that. Not looking at the bigger picture. Not looking at the systemic reasons of why the movement failed them and us. Right. But you looking at a generation beef, not just between two intellectuals. A generational beef of the new school, as we used to say, of the new black who feels that even though he intellectually understands that there is a personal detachment. Okay. You know what I mean? Yeah. With Cornel West, who not only understands it, but he was on the front lines of that. Right. In ways that Coates wasn't. In ways that our kids weren't. So, you know, so you try to explain a lot of times, we've been in situations like that, where you try to explain a lot of times to even our young black adults about civil rights and stuff, and you get this blank stare because, and what is that? Keep your eyes on the prize. That's, you know, the civil rights thing it's history to them.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. So there's a personal detachment for the fact that, well, I got to make mines, and I got to go about doing what I got to do. And I see that with Coates. I think Wes sees it with Coates. Is the fact that, yeah, he's brilliant with articulating our struggle. Mm-hmm. He's brilliant with articulating the struggle. But because he was raised up in the generation that he was raised up in the generation that was cut off from the black power struggles of the 60s and 70s. Right. So there's no nourishment there. There's no black revolutionary nourishment to stoke that fire. Wow. So now he is just on the side, like, I can articulate it, but personally, it's not my responsibility.
Oh, that's it. It's right. Not my responsibility. That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like. And that's a great point. The generational shift. And I see that same generational shift when I'm having these conversations with white progressives who call themselves revolutionaries, and they want to use something, and even some black people mm-hmm. who are riding on this cryptocurrency bandwagon, and they're thinking that cryptocurrency is going to save black people from poverty.
Right.
First of all,
and just before you go, we're winding it up because I see.
I know, but people are like, "Oh my God, they're still talking." Yeah. It's our show. You can watch it later. Yeah. But you have people who don't understand the basics of black poverty in this country. It is not like poverty in Bangladesh. It's not like poverty in Afghanistan. It is not like poverty in India. Mm-hmm. Poverty in this country was intentionally manufactured to be concentrated among black people. Yes. By policy, directly by policy, and indirectly by practice. So you've got situations like in Boston and in Washington, D.C., and in Philadelphia and in New York and every other major city where black people live in the city and a lot of white people live in the suburbs. If you apply for an apartment and your name sounds too black, it doesn't matter how much money you make, it doesn't matter what kind of job you have, it doesn't matter how many degrees you have, the landlord will more than likely not show you the apartment because of your black sounding name. Mm-hmm. So you're locked out of a housing market because of who you are. And then of course people are like, well, why don't you just change your name? Why should I have to change who I am in order to get people not to discriminate against mm-hmm. me? Right? So you have a situation in this country still where black people, regardless of how much education they have, how much experience they have, what the job is, whether they have a criminal record or not, almost make less money for the same job than white people on average. Mm-hmm. You got black people who have great credit scores and high incomes who are still charged higher interest rates for mortgages, car loans, charge more money for insurance. We pay more in this country because we black.
Yeah, I mean,
and that is through direct policy. The policy of exclusion, developers who won't build affordable housing, or developers who won't build certain amenities in areas where there are a lot of black people. And you have discrimination that's based on practice, like a landlord, a private landlord, not showing a black person an apartment because the name sounds too black. Mm-hmm. So then you have a situation where the average net worth of black people in Boston is $8, or the average net worth of black people in DC is around $12. Mm-hmm. The average net worth of black people around the country, it ain't no more than it's not even close to hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And what was that statistic we had mentioned some time on the show ago, where 50% of black people is below, oh my God, I can't remember that.
Below the they
were talking about housing wealth, and they were saying that
underwater.
It was some, all right, I'm not going to take up time with that, but I'll find it again. And that chart really shows you the pathetic state that black people are in economically. We are living in a situation, and I'm going to wrap this up. We are living in a situation in this country, Jackie, where we're not only being pushed out mm-hmm. and priced out, It's to the point where you're going to have, and I pray that this day won't come. But again, the black community, for the most part, and I don't want to say that. Let me take that back, because what I'm saying is that we have to really get our folks to understand the dire situation that we're in. The fact that cryptocurrency, all of these magical solutions that people come up to try to address the entrenched poverty of black people, none of that stuff works. Yeah, it could be something you can indulge in once you get your reparations. But what I'm saying is that it's funny, and you brought this up. It's mighty funny how we can get progressives, black and white, to all jump on the cryptocurrency and jump on the individual business models and all this other kind of stuff. But you can't get them all on board to say, okay, fine. Those things are something that we could think about. But one thing that we know will help and change things is to pressure government.
Yep.
Government is the only entity that we have that has the power to undo the damage that has been done.
Exactly.
You cannot use and just my final point on this whole cryptocurrency thing, and I mentioned this before. Why would I look to freedom? Why would I look to Wall Street for revolutionary ideas when it was Wall Street that traded my ancestors?
Come on, man.
When Wall Street existed primarily to trade my ancestors, now I'm going to go to the same institution and free market that had no problem using my ancestors as commodities. Now I'm going to go to them and seek revolution through them. You got to be out your damn mind.
And see, that's the kind of just common sense, basic understanding of the predicament of black people in this country that progressives don't seem to have. It's like, if your net worth is $8 and you're gonna tell me that, well, anybody can invest in cryptocurrency, all you need is $10, but if all I got is $8 left, I gotta borrow $2 in order for me to invest in cryptocurrency.
Oh, just to buy a piece of a coin.
Just to buy a piece of a coin. And again, our bandwidth is real weird. We haven't been able to figure this part out of, so I was gonna share our Coinbase account, because we did invest in some cryptocurrency. Look, we practice what we preach over here. I got no problems with investments. I don't have a problem with investments. I have a 401k. I invest in stuff. I have another investment account. I don't have a problem with investment. But that does not exonerate the government from paying me what they owe me. My investment don't have nothing to do with reparations. But let me tell you how I know these arguments about cryptocurrency is gonna address poverty in this country.
And you got the final word.
I do have the final word, and we're gonna talk about this some more, because we can't ever keep talking about it enough. But in this country, where we have an infrastructure that includes transportation, banking infrastructure, telecommunications, and we're not talking about a third world country where there aren't the kind of oversight and regulations that exist, where people in far-flung communities have to rely on alternate forms of currency. We're not in that situation here. So what's being done in Venezuela? First of all, Venezuela can create its own currency. Jackie Luqman over in Southeast DC, I can't create my own currency that anybody is going to recognize. And second, I live in Washington, D.C. I'm not in a village in Kurdistan and trying to trade with another group of Bedouins.
Right.
That's not our situation here. So I took a little bit of money we had extra, $100, and I invested $40 in Bitcoin. I invested $30 in Ethereum, whatever you call it, and $30 in Litecoin. Now that was 3 times the $10 minimum that I kept being told that you can invest and get a piece of Bitcoin. It was 4 times for, or cryptocurrency was 4 times as much for Bitcoin. That was like 3 weeks ago. I did this about 3 weeks ago. As of today, our $100 investment has netted $147. I should say that $100 investment has netted $47. That's the value of our investments right now. $47. We made $47 off that piece of Bitcoin. Now, in the meantime, our little $147 cryptocurrency account has $147 in it. On the first, our $1,058 mortgage is due. I can't pay our mortgage with that $147 in those pieces of Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin. On the first, Pepco bill is due. I can't pay the Pepco bill with our cryptocurrency account.
You can't pay none of our bills with
There is not any bill that we can pay, with the exception of maybe the cell phone bill, that we can take the money that we made in a month and pay from the cryptocurrency account. Not only that, but most of the merchants around this neighborhood don't even accept cryptocurrency as payment. And that is the truth in most poor neighborhoods. We got a giant down here. They have, the little card terminals. Like you go into most stores and you see Apple Pay and Samsung Pay where you can take your phone and whatever. We ain't got that. We don't have that. So if we don't have Apple Pay on our terminals in our grocery store that's part of a major chain, what the hell makes people think that they're going to take some cryptocurrency for some groceries? They don't. And the clothing stores down here don't. The check cashing joints down here don't. I don't know about the liquor stores because we don't drink. They might. I don't know. But the 7-Eleven? No. None of the merchants in this area that I know of accept cryptocurrency as a form of payment. None of the places where people have to go to do their daily business every day, every week, every month accept cryptocurrency as a payment. Even if somebody could borrow the $2 they need in addition to the $8 they have left over to invest in cryptocurrency. So while cryptocurrency is an investment that could be beneficial and pay off big for somebody who has the money to do it, the fact of the matter is, for poor black people in this country, and for most poor people in general in this country, it is not going to address poverty for them. Not for us. Because even if somebody had the money, they still have to wait until their cryptocurrency matures. And in between time, they still got to pay their rent, mortgage, bills. So then what are they going to do? So instead of advocating cryptocurrency as this revolutionary tool that's going to change, destroy the capitalist system, I don't know how that's going to happen when in this country especially, you do need a bank account because all the merchants don't accept cryptocurrency as payment. So you have to convert your cryptocurrency to legal tender in order to use it.
And most poor people, they're just not set up for that.
We just don't have access to the technology. So if people don't have access to the tools that are supposed to be the foundation of this revolution, how is it revolutionary? It's not. It's not. Not saying that cryptocurrency isn't an investment that if you have the money, you should invest in. You probably should. Not telling you not to invest in it. But an individual investment does not a revolution for an entire people make. And that is the blind spot with progressives in this revolution right now. We are not, too many progressives are hesitant to focus on and to seriously just ask, how is this going to help poor black people? How is this going to help Native people? If this solution that I have is not going to address the needs of poor black and poor Native people, then we need to rethink our solution. That's the blind spot in progressive politics and revolution right now. And unless we pay attention to that blind spot and correct it, 10 years from now, Our situation is going to be much worse. But y'all going to be exactly where you are, running around wondering how are we going to fight this government.
Without me giving up anything.
Without me giving up a doggone thing. Anyway, we've been on here long enough. So thanks y'all very much for joining us. Check us out on Twitter. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook. Also follow us on Instagram. Look for us on all those platforms under Luqman Nation. LuqManNation. All search for us on all those platforms using the same phrase. Yes, please do contribute to our GoFundMe campaign for our documentaries. Still working on that. We'll be ramping up production again in January. And consider becoming a patron of Luqman Nation. You can also find us on Patreon and GoFundMe under Luqman Nation. We will be live again. No, wait. Is this our live show? Last show for this year?
This is our last show for the year.
This is our last show for...
No, yeah, because Sunday's Christmas Eve, right?
Yes, Sunday is Christmas Eve.
It's our last show for the year.
This is our last show for 2017. You will see us again on Live in Luqman Nation in 2018. So, thank you all for joining us. Be very, very good to each other. Have a wonderful, wonderful Christmas, solstice,
New Year's,
whatever it is you celebrate.
What's the
Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, whatever it is you celebrate or don't celebrate. Enjoy, be safe, be good to each other. Peace.